Okay, the next kit we're going to be working on is the center of the diorama, you might say. It has the small AAA building in the front and the two false front buildings in the rear. We've actually divided this video into two parts because it got a little bit long. So basically we've covered the plywood building, which was all clapboard, and now we're going into a build that requires both an MDF and a clapboard aspect to it. So we cover a couple different aspects before moving on to an all MDF based building. So this part of the video is about doing the smaller part of the center diorama structure with the AAA sign on it, okay? So here's some videos. These are not meant to be totally complete videos, just hints of little things we did along the way. Please rely far more upon your instructional manual than on these videos as far as actually completing the kit. Hey, Artie here. We're going to be talking about one of the kits in the Cigar Corner series. This is called AAA. You'll see on the sign AAA. Now, this time around, I'm actually shooting this in my basement here in Bar Mills. This is in my home. And sometimes I have to get away from the office because there's so much going on with phone calls and all. So what I've done here is I printed out some instructions, as you can see here, some elevations, because everything has to be, done one thing at a time. And the first step, other than checking out the instructions, which I don't have yet, but I have the elevations, that's the start, would be to locate the MDF fabricated. In this case, this represents what would be cinder blocks as opposed to bricks. But the nice thing about the MDF is it's very firm. It's not very flexible at all, and it needs little to no interior bracing. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the instructions, and you can see right there the very first step. Okay, and one of the things it says in big letters is remove after adding sign parts. And what they're referring to, and it's printed right on the sheet there, you can see the word remove right there. So you have to do things in a certain order. So we're going to go through this one little bit at a time. I'm not going to start priming and painting anything right now. I'm going to think this out just for a minute, and then we can continue on this trip. And this is a great little building, and you really can go crazy with the details. So let's see. I'm just doing a very basic build. Detailing will happen when it's planted on the actual diorama for Cigar Corner, okay? Okay, what I've decided to do here is break the rules a little bit on my build. There are 4 walls, very simple structure. Not the way the conception of it is not simple, but certainly the build is simple. And we basically are going to be building a cube, as you can see there. And the whole idea in the beginning was to work on the first wall and do the sub-assemblies. I've decided not to do that. I've decided to, using this old single edge razor blade holder. You could use an X-Acto knife as well. This stuff is 1/16 of an inch thick, the MDF, and it's sturdy. It's really almost like cutting masonite. Has very small attaching sections to it. So what I've done is I've snapped out, there are 4 of them on this particular wall. I just started here. I snapped this one out. Now once it's out, you can see a little bit, if you look closely, about the little bit of a nupple right there, and I'll use the sanding stick to take this down. I'm going to take apart 4 walls. I'm going to remove them all, and they will interlock. If you notice the ends of this, they actually interlock to give you a perfect interlocking corner. And I'm going to put them together first, and I'm going to glue them. The idea is I want to paint them, I want to prime them, I want to weather them and use them as a unit. If I start detailing the front, it'll make painting all 4 walls together impossible because there'll be masking and things to do. So that's what I'm going to be doing now, and then I'm going to revisit step number 1. And while it may be a little more tedious to do it this way, I'll assemble the sub-assemblies on step number 1, which is the front wall, after the 4 walls have been joined together, to make the shape of the structure. It's very sturdy. I'm not really worried about having any problems. What I decided here to do was to put the walls together, prime them, and then treat them, and then approach it back to step number 1. Now, if you look really closely, the ends of the walls, I don't know if you can see them, they're very dark where the bricks are cut. So the idea here is these bricks and these bricks, if you look at the shape of them, am I in there? You see they zipper together. And when you put them together, let me just do this quickly here. you'd have to glue these obviously, but I'm going to hold them together like so. And if you can see, they're very dark there and they're very dark there. And we want to get a uniform brick color. So what I did was I took the other side of the wall just for demonstration. And I took my sanding stick. Now I used this long one. I could have used this one, would have been fine. And I just sanded very lightly because I don't want to change the dimension of these tabs coming out on the end of the wall. And when I put this together, and I did it to both surfaces, the front wall and in this case, the right side wall. And when you put these together, if you notice, let me see if you can see it, there's very little, if any, difference in color. And it just took a few swipes of the sanding stick to do that. So what I'm going to do is glue this together. Make sure it's square. If you have a little square, it's a good thing to have. And spray it with primer gray, although you could use also something like khaki, a flat khaki color. And then I'm going to, from there, add color to it and turn it into a brick, a brick look. And then finally remove this part that has to be removed and basically reiterate from step number 1 and finish this front wall. Because I want to move things along a bit, I've actually completed a front wall and a right wall and a rear wall and a left wall, and I put them together at right angles to each other, trying not to get too much glue squeeze out in the seams. And once this sets up, this whole thing will come together. I used, here again, and as in the other videos, the Turbo Tacky Glue. And if you notice, there are no interior bracing. There's no interior bracing here. This stuff is a 1/16 of an inch thick. The wall section's very solid, has no flexibility, and just with the proper amount of glue, you should be able to get in there and it should hold really, really well. Now what you're looking at here is the completed 4 walls of the shell. This is a right angle, and this is something you would be wise to have, especially in this kind of building. This is it's when I paid $9.95 for, which is probably about $6 too much. This is the kind of thing you can get at Harbor Freight Tools if you don't have one around. The nice thing about this is an engineering tool, and you'll notice the wide shoulder right here. So when you lay it down, rather than just have it flop down on one end, by applying a little pressure here, you'll be able to measure a little bit into your building rather than just have this scraping along your surface like a carpenter square. So by doing this, you can easily check, and a little pressure never hurt, you can actually check your angles to make sure everything is just easy peasy perfect. This one happens to be 3 inches. I find it ideal for this kind of work. And here again, you can see how perfectly square this is. It's all important to do this because eventually there'll be a roof on here, and the roof is not going to fit a structure that is not built to 90-degree standards. Now, in this case, the color of the building is going to be the same color as the primer, which is primer gray. This is touch tone, which is very inexpensive stuff. Unfortunately, the Walmart stuff is no longer available in gray. Normally, a finished color for a structure would not necessarily be gray, but as this building is modeled as concrete cinder blocks, we're going to start with a gray and then build up from there. So gray will indeed be the primary color of this building. So all we're going to do is paint this, give it 1 coat, and then continue from there. On this particular model, we've picked up what they call an elephant's ear, which was like 75 cents or so. We're going to see if we can get some of these in the kits for you. This we don't know yet. And I could not find my white paint, which happens. It's getting harder and harder to find craft paints, especially with AC Moore closing. So this is something I had laying around called bleached sand. And if you look at it on this plate, now the plate that I'm going to use is a paper plate, but it has a wax coating, so it's not absorbing the paint. And what I simply did was wet the sponge because it needed to be saturated first. And you could see very clearly the texture of the sponge right there. And what we're going to do is dip the sponge in the paint, and then I took a piece of scrap paper I had. It's actually another bag of sponges, so I wanted to try different ones out, and lightly blotted the sponge onto the back of the blue surface of this packaging. The idea is I wanted to see exactly how far I had to press the sponge into the surface to avoid it from actually painting it as opposed to texturing the surface. So this is simply some craft paint, and a sponge that's been moistened. And we're going to actually start on the back of this building because there's no sense starting on the front where you can see it. I want to do either the back end of it or possibly this side here, which although it has a door and a window involved, the way we have it set up in the diorama, it's not necessarily against something. That may change as we progress with building the diorama. Now this only took about 3 or 4 seconds to do this. I took the sponge, I pressed it into a piece of paper towel to get it somewhat dry. This is the sidewall, which has not been touched. And just by touching upon the back wall, you can see that really well in a rather random manner. We don't even have to fill in this case, with mortar lines, which is something I would normally think of. Now, if this wall had been brick instead of concrete cinder blocks, we would have probably used something like Rust-Oleum's flat khaki paint as a primer as opposed to the gray. But the gray, that with this faded look of this kind of oddball white, really works really well, and it shows the detail so much better than that, and it takes no effort. Even the corners, you'll notice that there's no real telltale signs of any kind of laser burn on that, and that was so quick to do. Now we're taking this a little bit slowly here. If you'll notice, I have this piece that I've just constructed, and it's identified as lower piece number 10, a piece of 3/32 square, and on top you can see number 11, and this is what it looks like. Now, to tell you the truth, most of this is going to be covered by sign. The fact that we even did this kind of detail here is just a habit for us. The vertical panel here, the one with the vertical stripes, is going to be pretty well hidden by a sign, unless you choose not to. And we're going to color it all one color, and we're going to basically go with a hunter line kind of a wash. What I did do, and it's not mentioned in the instructions, is I took an extra piece of strip wood. Okay, you can see a little bit of glue seeping out there to keep this flat, the bottom piece, the number 10 piece flat. Then this trimmed it, and this sat on top of it, was edge glued. And this will sit, let me pull this back here, in this area right above the door. Now, the thing of it is, I realized that when I put this in, this is a slight bit too long. And if you look at one end, you'll see it can be pulled back just a hair, and it's been over-engineered just a little bit to assure a snug fit. So once this dries totally, I don't want to handle this too much right now. What I'm doing is fine, but I don't want to handle this too much. What I'm going to do is use my sanding stick right along this edge. Excuse me on that. Use the sanding stick right along this edge and pull it back maybe a 32nd of an inch, maybe not even that. Just bring it back just a little bit there. At that point, before installing it, I'm going to color it. I do want to make sure the glue is totally dry first because we don't want any warping. And then we will go back, and if you look at the instructions, there is it's a plastic I-beam right here that will be inserted. That'll be pre-painted, weathered up, kind of rusty, and it will go in between this section of the door. And at that point, we'll be able to move on to the next step, which will be to actually remove the door opening. And you can see here again the I-beam along the upper edge, and then adding some 1/16 inch square to frame out what would be the front garage door. Okay, we're going to take a little look at what's going on here. As I showed you earlier, the concrete, the cinder blocks came out really well. I've added the insert into the upper section of this wall. I used a little weathering mix from Hunterline on the upper surface, and included the sign with the kit. Now this sign was actually from the original building that stood, and it was kind of a coal company and a hauling company. The left side being the coal company, and you'll see how that works out. On the side of the building, because there's going to be an alley here, and it's going to be kind of closed off, but we put an automobile-related sign. It says tire mounting, and if you look closely, it says entrance around corner, because there's going to actually be a piece of chain link fence over here. Now the front of this isn't done yet. You can see I've put in the beam right where my thumb is, and you see the vertical 1/16 inch square framing for the garage door, and I've yet to color that and touch it up just a little bit. And the garage doors are interesting. There are actually 3 doors that fold back, and here's one of them. Let me hold this up in front of you really clear there. Whoops, dropped it. Now this has glass in it already. We've already installed that. It has a front and detail all as well on the back with a core in the middle. And I am not going to paint this. I like it the way it is. Gave me a chance to put the glass in. You could do a couple colors on this if you wanted to. It's not my choice to do that. I may go in and touch it very lightly with a little bit of diluted alcohol India ink just to break it up. But sometimes clean is pretty good, and you can't tell under this light, but this looks pretty good. And this, of course, will be mounted in this area here, and we're going to pose them. We're going to pose them open so you can see inside of the building when the time comes, something along those lines. And of course, there's other things to be added all along this area here and this area here as well. So although the light may not be the best in this particular room, I think you get a pretty good idea of where this is starting to go. A little bit of attitude with a terrific sign, yet another sign, and there will be lights placed above this billboard on the side, by the way. And finishing up the shell as we go along. Maybe a little dry brushing in order. We shall see when that happens. Hi guys, good morning. It's the next day. This has not been a big project as far as the time involved. Everything is fit together incredibly well. I did not use any interior bracing at all. I just used a little glue on the inside of the joints and made sure I minimized whatever squeeze that I had on the outside because I didn't want that screwing things up. Basically, I primed it, as you know, with primer gray paint. And then I used the sponge to use some white paint, but it's an off-white paint. The one that I used here was either oatmeal, of all things, or this is actually Deco Art bleached sand. And if there's a number on this, I don't know what it is. It's 59 milliliters. Anyhow, that's it right there. It may be backwards to you, hopefully not. This is a craft store paint that I applied with a sponge. I added some graphics while I was at it, and I actually did all of that before adding the roof or anything else. The doors went on really easily. This is actually a triple door. It's a trifold, I guess. And let me show you what we have so far. Now, I've added the roof. I have not added all of the doors and windows yet. And this here is I know it's not well lit, okay, but this here is what I've got so far. You can see exactly what's going on there as far as, if you notice, that little heavy powders towards the bottom of the wall sections. I've added what will be a light extension, a lamppost extension on the outside, as well as some graphics. And the back I've just left plain. Nobody's going to see it. On the roof, I've used our traditional rolled roofing, along with a few scraps of wood and a chimney, which is yet to be weathered. And you can see how the doors work out. See, these doors on the end bifold. And I'm going to put a little floor in here because I want to put something inside here. And basically, I know it's not going to photograph really well because of the lighting situation here. But I'm going to tell you, it's really, really a well-detailed structure. The sign on top there, that one says AAA, is actually off of the original photo of this building. So that's the original sign that we duplicated and scaled to fit. So that's what we have, nice and square. All together, what I'm missing the window treatment for this brick extension as well as the roof there, an entry door here, as well as an entry door on the side and a window on the side. And then after that, it's just a matter of adding details, more on the roof and possibly a few other posters and everything on it. And we'll get back to that a little bit later. Like I say, you really can't go by the quality of what you're seeing here because the lighting here is very rudimentary, and this is an informative video. Look at the color photos with the instruction booklet, and you'll have a better idea of how this all scaled out, okay? I want to take a moment and make a couple things apparent. I have a couple crutches that I use here. When I say crutches, I simply mean items that I rely upon for detailing and so on. Now, with the demise of Polyscale and Folkwell, we've had to use other paints, and I have been using Folk Art paints on this as well as Deco Art. Most of these are made by Plaid, P-L-A-I-D. You used to be able to find them in Michael's. Unfortunately, they're getting more difficult to get, and of course the prices are going up, but they're still a really good bargain compared to what we would normally pay for, say, polyscale or flow quill. I see a little flickering on the screen. Hopefully that's not a problem. The other thing I use a lot, and I don't use just one, this is called Cordovan Brown. I also have Creosote Black. These are Hunterline pre-mixed washes or stains, similar to alcohol and India ink, pre-measured though, ready to go. Unfortunately, they've gone up in price a lot. And of course, Rick Hunter, who owns the company, along with his wife, are in Canada, and they're in Cambridge, Ontario. Phone number 866-934-4174, hunterline.com. They're expensive these days, but I've had this bottle for a long time. Is it worth it? To me, it is. I have it once, and I'll probably have it for 5 years. I've been using, over time, pan pastels. This is an open one. I love using yellows. This is called yellow ochre, O-C-H-R-E. But I went to the art supply store the other day, and I just wanted to get a few things. And I went for a few dollars, and I purchased this, which is a set of 10 different colors. And it includes some sponges in here too, you can see on the bottom and also in the middle. And this is kind of convenient. It's a little tricky getting them on and off. And it's a 10 color pack, and it comes with a kind of a gray, which I like. Black, a red iron oxide, a raw umber, a burnt sienna, a burnt sienna tint, a raw umber tint, a neutral gray, and neutral gray tints, and a titanium white. So for me as a structure builder, if this came with blues and bright reds or something, this would not fall within what we do. This is the packaging, and I'm looking here, but I'm not seeing a catalog number offhand. But if you want to see what the packaging looks like, this is it. This came off of it. It's a 10-pack, and it ran some money, but these last a very long time, and it's exactly what I use. If you look at the bottoms of the walls, how they're dirtier. That's not paint. That's very judiciously applied powders. Even this right now, I put the utility box on the side. It's a little bright. Once that settles into place and dries thoroughly, I'm going to brush it over with some powders to help control contrast, as well as introduce color, which is an important thing. So here's where we are on the building. I need a window, I need a door, a window and a door, maybe some signs, definitely a little something on the inside. And with this kit, there are optional details from Woodland Scenics that we're making available at a one-time only, a great price. I mean, a really incredible price. So this being a transfer and hauling business, if you look at the original drawing, not the drawing, the photo of this original building, you'll see there was a rusted out old car in here. So we're going to put one in this for the diorama when that happens. And the interim, I'm adding chimneys, all kinds of little stuff to the roof to help finish this out as we go along. So that's just some inside information on what we've been using here as far as, to get the results we've gotten. That's it for right now.